there's calls building up and there's puts building up. You watching at the total interest, total OI, or the net JEX? What are you watching exactly when you say that?
So that's a great, the question that you're asking is how are you gauging what's happening here? And so we have this, this concept of the left-hand plane and the right-hand plane. And I'm also, while I'm talking here, I'm gonna go to netstat CSCO, and I'm gonna just do say 0 to 28, which should give me the next 4 weeks. Okay, or next 4 expiries. So Cisco, are you, Alex, are you familiar with this presentation?
Sorry, I was just looking at the unmute button. Yes, I'm familiar with that lesson. Only with the net delta. I didn't do the new one you just posted. I'm waiting to do it tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me give you the kind of the preview of this just for clarity and as you go through it. So the first thing to realize what we do here, and I just turned off, I just clicked down here in the legend, I just clicked on turning these off. And so you see the blue line here. And the blue line is an oscillator that we've created. And the oscillator tells us what's called delta balance. And basically, this oscillator goes between -1 down here and +1. And the whole purpose of the oscillator is just to tell us where are the deltas being favored within the overall structure. And when it's up here at +1, that's bullish, right? Call dominated. And when it's down here at -1 or close to -1, it's put dominated, right? So we can measure that, and we do that looking at the option structure, looking at the left-hand plane, which is in the 3D graph is the area below spot price. And then in the right-hand plane is the area above spot price. So when I turn on, let's just turn on the left-hand plane, and let's look at the left-hand plane in context of what's happening. So the left-hand plane here is this red level. And you can see there are some times where it barely comes down below, but for all intents and purposes, Cisco has remained for the most part, it has remained, it doesn't get super duper bearish, right? It's not going super negative down here, which would be put dominated. But what it does do is it goes close to zero, where the puts and the calls are balanced, right? So a zero value in the delta balance, like right here, is telling us that literally puts and calls in terms of their net delta are balanced, right? You're literally the fulcrum of the teeter-totter, going back and forth. That fulcrum, you're literally the zero values right at the middle there. Okay. So you can see as DB took off here, and let's just turn off DB and just kind of look and see what happened here. So prices are falling, and you can see, excuse me, that again, zeros right here. It auto scaled when I turned off the DB because we lost the minus side of this. So this is the zero value. We collapsed, and we had a balancing of, in this particular case, in the left-hand plane where the puts and the calls. Now remember, the left-hand plane contains the in the money calls. Those deltas are always going to be there, right, for a liquid stock. And so it's up to the out of the money puts to go in and start pounding that area. And what I'm talking about for Cisco is that below the gold line, the puts are out of the money and their delta is less than 50. And the calls, even though you can see we're getting kind of thin down here, their deltas are greater than 50. And so it takes far more puts to offset what we have down here. So the left-hand plane is below the gold line. The right-hand plane is above the gold line. And you can go look at the 3D plots for this, and that'll give you a really good context of what we're playing with here. So when we look at the delta balance, we're kind of gauging what is happening with the left-hand plane and the right-hand plane. So all of a sudden, and this is probably an earnings event, just this gap up here, but you can see that the left-hand plane, basically, we scared the bejesus with this most likely an earnings event. We just scared the hell out of the puts. They said they're, with this gap up, we are getting out, right? There's no chance in Hades that we're going to make any money on our out of the money puts. And you can see the line just skyrocket up here, which is very bullish, right? So now the left-hand plane has become devoid of out of the money puts. And this is what this is telling us. And we're, it balances, speculation happens, people come in, people go out, they do whatever they're doing. And then you can see as the put percentage increases, as the out of the money speculation increases, we then get a drop in price that corresponds to this, that correlates with that. And then you can see again, remember the scale over here on the right-hand side is 0 to 1. As prices start recovering, the bears get scared, they close their puts, that puts fuel to the fire. Basically, closing puts is like making us longer, dealer short. Dealer has to buy, we start forcing the price up, and the cycle repeats, right? So that's that. Now, we can do the same thing. I'm going to turn off the other two. Now you see just the green line, right? And look at the scale here again. We got +1 here, -1 here. Now, this is the right hand. This is the speculation plane. This is the measurement of speculation for a given stock. And so you can see that when we are heavily into, and this is the right-hand plane, when we're heavily negative here, what do we know that's above the gold line? Those are in the money puts. In the money puts live above us. Their deltas are negative, right? So as price drops and we see the right-hand plane also dropping in terms of its concentration of, balancing calls and puts, we're leaving very negative deltas in the right-hand plane. There's no speculation to the upside. The calls got scared. The calls basically said, we're out. As soon as price starts coming down, we're toast. We're out of here. And you can see that occurs for a while. And then, we had, like I said, ostensibly that earnings event or whatever. And then we start seeing some return, but maybe not as strong, right? Not as strong of the calls. Remember, the 0 line is the balance point. That's that fulcrum. So we didn't get like huge amounts, but we got major changes to the point where we started seeing calls go in. And you can see there was probably some profit taking as price went up, right? You've got kind of this topping structure, and then we're back below 0 and price gets weaker and down we come, right? So the combination of DBH, and this is why you see us talking about DBH. DBH gives us a visibility of the delta balance history. DBH gives us a visibility of what are the speculators doing on each side of the fulcrum. And that's important because fear and greed control what they're going to do. And price is directly related to that, right? Price can drive it, but we also know there's a feedback effect that, hey, as I start dropping in price, I'm going to start opening more puts. And by the way, as I drop price, I'm capturing more what were out of the money. I'm now making them at the money and then in the money. So I'm driving the complex more negative in deltas. That's part of what happens here. And then we also see people just opening puts, opening negative deltas into the overall complex. And as we open those deltas into the complex, we continue to drive price down until we start getting some stabilization and, henceforth, et cetera, the price repeat or the cycle repeats. So then, when we look at this, decompose it, right? Decompose into what's the price action doing? Does it make sense? And I would say Cisco makes sense the way we just walked through it, right? And now we're pushing for Cisco, we're pushing all-time highs, at least for the last 60 days, 65 days, I think is what this chart is. And you can see DBH is banging the top, right? So DB is banging the hot. We've got a value of 1. And if you look at the very bottom, it says September 27th. So I'm on the lines here and I'm right at the very, very right. I'm on the HTML. Every one of our Discord graphs has got a blue area HTML graph. When you click that, you get this interactive chart. Always play with the interactive chart. You'll get a lot of information out of it. So the fact that this is telling me that this Friday is still positioned very much so on the bullish side for Cisco. We don't have a mass panic And even though we had the markets do what they did today, Cisco's still strong. Now we got out of it in our P trans to peak X because we had the signal to get out, and it's a mechanical strategy. We have to get out. That's the rule, right? You don't have to get out. And if you were holding um, a vertical on this, and that vertical had freed up some of your risk bucket, you're still probably in pretty good shape. Now, what's the stuff on the right? For stocks, we project the next 3 expiries that are into this. And if you hover over them, you can see there's October 4th, there's October 11th, and then there's October 18th. And so what this is basically telling us for Cisco is that DB, the delta balance, is still very, very bullish. This is a structure. It's not a prediction. This is saying the market is positioning Cisco on the call side of the equation. They've already launched their missiles. They bought those calls, and there's more calls in the complex than there are puts. How can we make that statement in deltas? Well, right here. First of all, net delta left-hand plane, that's the area below price. That's where the in-the-money calls are and the out-of-the-money puts are. It's very, very bullish. It's close to 1. There's minuscule calls, or excuse me, minuscule puts that are above us. And sure enough, if we go back and look, you can see the puts above the gold line vaporize. There it is. Right? So DBH can tell you what's in this chart without even looking at it. You just got to think through it. Let's go back. We also have down here, remember, this is the right-hand plane. Now, this is generally always going to be weaker. I say generally. There are instances where this is up here and it's dancing with the left-hand plane, and it's super duper strong. That's a real bullish system, especially as this starts to move up as the right-hand plane. Remember, that's the speculation for calls. As that gets really, really bullish and it just pounds the in-the-money puts into the ground, this green line is going to start moving up closer to 1. There's a lot of, call it a squeeze. I don't care what you call it. There's a lot of pressure going on in that particular issuance, and you need to look deeper. You need to look at it in some detail. But this being above 0 on each of these time frames tells us, and again, we're not looking at OI, we're not looking at the stuff in the middle. This is telling us the structure is supportive to move high. So you can look at, I guess the takeaway here, Alex, is this. You can look at this and you can get a fairly good sense of what charm is going to do and what delta looks like. And, obviously this is what we do. And so I can look at this and I can see kind of what a delta balance would look like without having the visual of the delta balance. But we've created the tool for delta balance. So you can look at delta balance, and then you can, if you want, you can go back to the web tool and tie it all together and say, yeah, that makes really good sense, or not, and ask questions.